a difficulty of 10. And Nunes is an absolute magician. He set up for...
Hello and welcome to another edition of Try Nunes is an Absolute live stream. I'm here as always, Steve Haller. With me, as always, Christian de Guzman. As today, Kevin Wall. How we doing? Filling in for Mr. Pregler on this glorious Sunday.
Yeah, you swapped one Arsenal fan for another. So.
Well, we can't all be perfect.
Well, we have that balance. We have that balance perfectly correct. Something that Boeheim's army definitely didn't have at the beginning of that game, because good lord, did that look bad for 3.5 quarters.
So we may as well dive right into it. There's no reason to cut any or pull any punches on that.
No sugarcoating how bad that team looked, especially because it seems like Syracuse's shooting woes from the first half of the season kind of transferred into the alumni team. Because what was it? They were under 30% at one point through the first half, which is about
very
what you
Syracuse
expect from a Syracuse team. And then what do you expect from a Syracuse team? The non-Syracuse players eventually won the game, which was basically, Kevin, what happened at that game.
Yeah, hey, Syracuse basketball gets bailed out by a Boston College alum. It's just. Is there anything more fitting for the last year or so in sports than that happening?
Healy's rolling on the floor in Chicago right now because of that.
Yeah, that's overall. You could tell the team from all accounts they didn't have much time practicing prior. I think they only got together a day or two before. It looked it, and it wasn't fluid. It wasn't pretty. McCullough looked better than I thought he would. Malachi looked like Malachi.
Malachi looked like he was. Malachi looked like the only reliable scoring option, which was probably a good amount of his Syracuse career as well. Yep. So the parallels still return there. But again, it shows what happens when you try to insert people into a 2-3 zone system that don't know how to play the 2-3 zone and have only tried to play it for 2 days. And so that's what happens when a Boston College and St. John's alum try to play the 2-3.
Yeah, but it showed why those guys were valuable pickups in that fourth quarter, because Kennedy, Kane, and Rice, basically just took over in that final stretch. And, they say that the first game's the hardest one, I think, because these are usually groups of players that are thrown together without a lot of preparation. So we'll see tomorrow night whether or not they look like a more cohesive unit out there and kind of work through those jitters a little bit. But, it certainly was a very Syracuse-esque game, though, where it was just like, why am I watching this? What am I doing to myself? And then, oh, wow, look, hey, this is great. And they scored, 23 points in the first half and then 22 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, exactly. And then... And then holding forces assault to only 3 points in the fourth quarter, because as half the Syracuse population wants, they switched to man-to-man out of the 2-3 zone.
Yep. And, there are plenty of things they can work on. There are plenty of ways that they can, shore up some of the things that were just glaring issues. And that'll come with time. And unfortunately, when you put a team together for a tournament that happens once a year and then you have to go back to the rest of your life, that time thing, how quickly they adapt is going to really predicate how far this team goes.
Right.
So this team plays Heartfire next in the next round. That is, like Kevin said, happening tomorrow. Heartfire the 11th seed. I believe Syracuse has actually played this team before in some instance. I'm not sure. Like, again, the same guys might not be the same there, but some familiar faces like Jared Wilson Frame from Pittsburgh. LaFonso Ellis is the head coach of this team, so that should be fun and interesting. It's not Doug Gottlieb, so that's a wild change.
All gigantic, everything. Gary McGee.
Yeah, Gary McGee.
Yes, Gary McGee. Oh God, yeah.
And LaFonso Ellis is lacing him up as the coach.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's tough because, like, how do you proceed here from Boeheim's army? Do go back to the man-to-man? Do you try and tough it out with a 2-3? Do you live and die by Malachi in the first quarter again? It's tough to see where they go from here.
I think can't come out at 2-3 against the LaFonso Ellis coach team because they're just going to get the ball to the circle because that's how you beat the zone. As he tells us 30 times a game in his broadcast, that's the way to beat the zone. I think you'll see. I thought the guys that I expected a little bit more from the other night, it was probably Kiefer Sykes, who I think can give this team a little bit more of a boost off the bench. So I'd be curious if as they settle in. And sort of shake off the rust. I think they'll play a little bit more man, especially with guys like Kane and Kennedy. Those guys are, Kennedy didn't have a very good game, but you look at the stats afterwards, and he had 8 boards in limited minutes. I mean, those guys they're vets, and they grind it out. And in a tournament like that, that teams don't want to face that sort of in-your-face style. In the summer, these guys are kind of coming off a long year. I think, as those of you who watched the U.S. men's team play today, this has been a really grueling time for a lot of athletes, and to be thrown in these situations, the last thing they want to do is be forced to really work for it for an entire game because people are just, we're all kind of sick and tired of everything. So these guys just, they're like, hey, let me get through this, and I know it's a lot of money, but man, they don't want someone in their face for, but it's not quite 36 minutes because of the Elam ending. So whatever the total time works out to be.
Well, and what are we expecting, Steve, from the Cuse alumni? Because as we mentioned, a lot of this game was built off Rice and Kane going off in that fourth quarter. But then we saw again Malachi really being the only Cuse alumni to get really an impact on the game. We saw a little bit from Devendorf, but he had limited minutes, and then guys like Chris McCullough and Tyler Lydon were missing wide open and easy high percentage chances. So what are we expecting from those guys heading into the next couple of rounds here?
I would assume that Lydon looked like he was real rusty, and I got a hunch that can only improve. I would be intrigued if we see some of White in some spot up shooting type situations. Although the way he looked in that 3-point contest was about hot garbage, so
yeah, that's so true.
When your shooter's looking like that, things aren't all that kosher. And then, I mean, you've got what? CJ and is that it? He might be the only other alum.
Now I'm forgetting the roster. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, I think some of
it's
matchup dependent. Some of it's matchup dependent. Like a team that might try and throw some zone out there, then you'll see White. I thought McCullough looked better. They were outsized. I agree with Lydon, and Lydon certainly looked like a guy who hasn't been playing professionally, unlike most of the teams. So I think he could do a little bit more. I would expect as things go along, he might be able to knock down some shots, especially. But I think McCullough could take advantage, especially as a small ball 5, which he was kind of in that unit at the end, and that's where Kane and Kennedy can work because they are such good defenders and rebounders, and allows you to put McCullough in there and let him take advantage of his sort of athletic ability on some bigger, slower guys.
Well, and that'll be something we might want to see against McGee, although, in his college days, he could actually, it wasn't like he was a Sherman tank down there. He could recover. He was athletic at 6'11".
Yeah. Right.
This type of size matchup is definitely where Chukwu not being able to make the trip really doesn't help us. So we'll see where that goes. Like having that 7-footer against someone the size of McGee would be a big benefit.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Pascal Chukwu is stuck in Switzerland because of the unfortunate, COVID visa laws that are still very, very, very confusing. And yeah, it feels like Boehm's Army is kind of missing that size that would be very hopeful down the stretch. Theoretically, this team should get by Hardfire. I think we're all thinking that, right?
One would hope.
One would hope, yeah. I mean, they're certainly one of the more talented rosters. The Illinois team, which was one of the teams seated higher in that region, lost. So I mean, the
Yeah,
pathways to get to that final group in Dayton is opening up a little bit for Boeheim's Army, so really need to take advantage of it.
Yeah, the 2 seed House of Pain losing to the Jackson, Tennessee underdogs, the 15 seed. So the Boeheim's Army will get the winner of a 7-15 matchup. So like theoretically, you're in a good spot. We haven't seen the top team in that team play yet in the Marquette Golden Eagles alumni team. So and that team is always very good in TBT. So it will be until the Elite Eight of the tournament until those teams potentially match up. But there is a path opening up for a deep run for Boeheim's Army. So we'll see about that. That will happen again tomorrow. I forgot what time tomorrow. Kevin, do you know off the top of your head what time tomorrow?
I believe it's a 7:30 tip on ESPN2, if I remember correctly. Didn't know I wrote about it, but
yes, it's 7 p.m. on ESPN2. That is indeed correct. So that will happen tomorrow, and we'll see. Well, if you're watching on the site on Monday morning, it's happening tonight. So make sure you tune in.
Hello, future people. How are you?
On me again. Yeah. But if you're watching live here on Sunday, first of all, thank you guys for watching live here on Sunday, and hopefully Boeheim's Army moves on. Unlike U.S. basketball, which didn't have Jeremy Grant play and now finds themselves in a little bit of trouble trying to find some momentum in their pool in the Olympics. That wasn't pretty.
No, it wasn't pretty, but I also think there's some overreaction. They have Iran and the Czech Republic as their next 2 games. I think, I only caught the end of the game, and it looked like they just missed a lot of open shots. And I think, you might question why you're closing out the game with Kevin Durant, 14 months after tearing his Achilles, and Drew Holiday, who just finished the championship series and flew over to Japan like 2 days ago, while guys like, Grant were on the bench. But there are opportunities. I mean, you have a team that missed 2 wide open looks 30 seconds ago that would have taken the lead. And, I think it's early on to panic for people. It won't be easy because of the amount of talent that's certainly in the game. But I read what Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News today said, you shouldn't have an NBA coach, you should have a college coach because NBA coaches are too distracted. And that point would make sense if you're talking about have a retired coach. Like, I know Jeff Van Gundy coached the U.S. team at some championships. I think it was a qualifier, one of the early qualifiers for the Olympics. And that might make sense, but you're telling me guys when they had Coach K and Boeheim that those guys were, just kicking around doing nothing leading up to the Olympics. I mean, the college coaches are trying to work in brand new players on their roster over the summer and make all that fit. So, it's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction, but it's kind of this. I get that some people don't like watching NBA players play and they'd rather see college, and if that's your perspective, fine. But to say, we shouldn't have Popovich coach because he's too distracted, so we should go back to college coaches because that was successful. No, we should go back to having LeBron and Steph Curry and, the top 10 players from the NBA going over there and playing, not JaVale McGee,
Yeah, and that's... the other thing is it's very similar to what's happening in women's soccer. It's very similar to what's happening in a lot of sports where the U.S. was historically dominant. We're not the only fish in the pond at this point. And if we're not bringing the A team, then we're going to have lumps like this. I mean, look at how any of the exhibitions went. Like the Nigeria and who else did they? What was the other one they lost?
Was it Australia?
Might have been.
Australia.
Yeah.
That one's mind-boggling. But
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
ironically those 2 teams played today. Australia versus Nigeria earlier today. I don't remember what the result of that game was, but yeah, it's probably Nigeria lost because they didn't have Michael Benager. Let's be honest.
Makes sense.
Probably.
So in that case, zero orange appearances so far at the Olympics.
Well, no, we've had others. Jenna Kyra is actually 1-1 for Canada softball pitcher. She took the loss against the U.S. And then came back and got the win. And they play their final pool game early in the morning.
Tonight against Italy at 1:30.
Yeah. So if they win that, they'll play in the bronze medal game.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I
forgot softball had already kicked.
Yeah, I see. Just looking through Kevin's post as well. Harry Taylor for the women's 4 in Great Britain. Great Britain, I think, made the final, and that's happening, I think, this morning as well.
I don't think she did. I think Chris Carlson reported that she did not. Her 4s boat did not advance. Katie Severis competes in the triathlon. That'll be shown on Monday evening. I think it's live on NBCSN. So if you're watching this on Monday morning, check out Katie tonight. She's definitely got a medal shot in the triathlon. And Kayla Alexander and the Canadian women's team tip off again
tomorrow against Serbia.
It's 4:20 a.m. at 4:20 a.m. So I think a lot of people will be waking up to watch that game.
Yeah. So by the time you hear this, all of the Orange except for Justin will have competed.
Yeah.
So I was way off on my stand.
Yeah. Justin is the August 3rd is the opening round in the 5,000. So. Yeah,
track starts. I keep forgetting. Track starts really late.
Most of the cycle. It's weird because it always seems, and I don't know if it's for TV purposes or what, but it's like track always seems to start after swimming. And I don't know if it's just a bodies thing or.
I think it is planned that way.
Because they're two big draws.
I think because I think that's where you get the most eyes. Like think like in Olympics, like people associate the Olympics most with the swimming and track events. So like you probably front load the schedule at swimming and then keep people interested for track.
What? Not skateboarding and sevens rugby?
No, skateboarding was electric last night. You guys watching that?
I didn't end up seeing it, but
the one guy that racked his hip on the rail.
I did see that. On Twitter. I did see that.
That I saw, and the 3-on-3 basketball is entertaining.
It is. I was very hesitant when I saw that, and I'm like, I don't know if. Oh, okay, I'll watch that.
Because then we realized it's just pickup basketball. Like it's pickup basketball with maybe a bit more formalized rules. I love the fact that when you watch the 3-on-3, when you look at the referees, they're wearing a t-shirt and gym shorts, like they just walked out of the weight room, and it's like, okay, we just need one guy to come here to like ref this random pickup game.
Oh yeah, it's random dude at the Y, totally like yeah, absolutely.
So that was interesting. Am I right? We were trying to figure this out last night. The U.S. men didn't qualify for 3-on-3. I'm pretty sure. Like it's only the women.
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, it's only the women who qualified for 3-on-3, not the men. So that's always fun.
The women are coached by Kara Swisher, right?
Or Kara Lawson.
Or Kara Lawson.
They're coached by Kara Lawson. They have Kelsey Plum on that roster, former #1 pick, I believe.
Definitively not Kara Swisher, who's a journalist for Newsweek, apparently.
Might not have been the team that qualified.
Whoops. Minor detail.
minor details, but
if she was coaching the 3-on-3, we might not have as good a shot as with Lawson.
Well, but if you're looking up, trying to figure out the Orange alumni that have participated in the Olympics or will be participating in the Olympics, we already have a post up from Kevin that went up earlier this week about which of the exact Orange alumni are participating in the tournament, and we'll probably have an update post like later this week about what the final results were. So make sure you tune in to the site for that.
Exactly, and everything is streaming on NBCOlympics.com. And for those of you that do have Peacock, they have the replays by sport. So I know that some of these times are impossible for people to watch. So definitely worth checking out the replays, seeing some Syracuse alums participating, and trio from Canada. So
you don't mean everyone's. You don't mean everyone's waking up at 4:20 today to watch Kayla Alexander in Canada play Serbia?
I would imagine there's a few, but
I know Steve wakes up early and he's not even going to be up for that.
I actually may catch the second half, judging by when I normally wake up.
So again, Olympics are always fun. Tune into the site. We'll try and figure out what happens there. But now we get into our favorite part, the football part, because finally we have football to talk about. We finally have media coverage to talk about, because when's the last time we got that this season, or at all? Like, it's probably
Never.
It's probably been since like what, March, since we've heard Dino Babers talk, and that was like the only press conference he held. And then ever since then, it's like been since December since we've heard like a player talk.
Well, yeah, I
So the
mean, they
media-
had the whatever they were called there, where they talked to the season ticket
Fireside
holders.
chat.
But yeah,
The
but those were about as outside of Tony White, who dropped some nuggets. The rest of them were all about as coach speak as they get.
Yeah, and we finally got ACC Media Day, the ACC football kickoff, taking place earlier this week. We got Andy to go through a couple of the quotes, and Aaron Service doing his best Steve impression with the high man bun in those pictures. Steve, did you approve?
Oh, absolutely. This is you. If you didn't know, this is the stock offensive lineman look now. Yeah.
Yeah, it pretty much is, and that's basically what Service looked like at the media kickoffs.
So when we get NCAA 24, that's what you'll get. When you
no, Steve is going to be
do your dynasty.
Steve is going to be face scanned for that game.
Yeah.
And it's like if you like try to create a player in like EA college football, and you like, I want to try to create a player as an offensive lineman, and one of the default faces will just be Steve.
Makes sense. I still remember, and Kevin,
bun.
Kevin will remember these days. Back when, before taking a picture or using a webcam to scan your face was a thing, you could find a way to scan a picture in somehow, and like actually put the polygon dots on your face to get it in. Like, that's when this first came out. It was very miserable. It's much nicer to just be able to, hey, there's a camera everywhere. I have a camera in my pocket. This is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, you can imagine what the main topics of discussion were at the ACC kickoff, and we can talk about it with Steve, because we know what the first topic is. What the hell is going on with the offensive line? Hey, we got an inkling of like why the offensive line was so depleted last year.
One of the weirdest inklings.
For some of the dumbest reasons.
Yeah. When Babers came out and said that most, if not all, of the offensive line injuries, which were numerous, were from off the field stuff, it's like, what the hell are we doing, guys?
What are we doing? I mean, like, is Syracuse just not putting enough salt on the roads? Like,
yeah, I don't know. Like, how, if ever, and they were apparently, from what he said, they were all like wildly different too. It was all just complete fluke everything, and when that takes your entire
he said one guy hurt himself walking down the stairs.
Yeah, yeah, like, okay, cool, that's fine. That happens to one guy a year, but when it's apparently half of your offensive line and you're down to 6 guys on the season, including walk-ons, it's like, okay, this is a little awkward. So I guess, as we've all thought, the only way to go is up. It was very encouraging to hear Service and Babers talk about Schmidt and how he's influencing the team. It seems very much in line with things that I had thought were lacking and that they're immediately addressing. Most specifically, actually attacking at the line of scrimmage when need be, instead of playing a weird passive, even a passive like half zone scheme run block that wasn't working because they couldn't engage. So we'll see where that goes. But the acknowledgement of the trenches was foremost in my mind from everything that came out of it. So between Babers and Service, it was good to hear that things are moving forward with Schmidt and people are all on the same page.
I mean, this team's not going to do anything without a serviceable offensive line.
Serviceable?
It doesn't matter who goes back there, quarterback, who's that wide receiver. I mean, there's just nothing's going to happen if they look like they have the last 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully that is the focus of not only the spring but upcoming preseason camp as well, because Dino wants to run the ball, and if they can't move teams off the line on first downs. As a guy who's charted first downs the last couple of years, I can tell you, when they do move the ball on first down, the team has been able to continue to move the ball. But when they go backwards, first and second down, and teams are just able to go up, it's third and long, here comes the pass, and let's send everybody.
Yep.
Or they didn't even have to send everybody. They sent 3 guys and got pressure.
Yeah.
And then we're asking quarterbacks to try and find someone open when there's 8 defenders dropping back into coverage. So
Yeah.
it's positive to hear that, especially the coach, coming in, and hopefully spring practice makes a difference.
Yeah, I think the one quote from Service sums it up. And I quote, "Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter who's behind us. Up front, if we can't keep them standing upright, it really doesn't matter how talented they are." When asked about the quarterback room, I was like, "Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's an accurate statement."
Yeah, and speaking of that quarterback group, I know a lot of people on watching the site, a lot of people on our Twitter page, a lot of people in the comments want to see Garrett Schrader get the ball. For the 100th time, it's going to be Tommy DeVito starting.
Yeah.
Whether he remains the starter is a question that will be answered later this season. But for at least the first third of this season, Tommy DeVito's getting the ball behind center to take the reins of the Orange offense. And I think we're continuing to hear reaffirmation of that, especially from the guys at Media Day.
Well, talking about the QBs, I was curious when Taj was asked about the talent in the room. He said, "Quarterback's looking pretty good. It's been good since I got here. Tommy's pretty good. Schrader's pretty good. But it's not just those guys. Jacoby and Morgan, Luke McPhail, a bunch of young guys." He singled out Jacobian and McPhail. What happened to Markevich and
And
Lamson isn't here yet, right? Or did he January enroll?
Lamson's here. Lamson was one of the, I think there were like 5 early enrollees, along with like Deuce Chestnut, Malcolm Folk, Terry Lockett, and one other guy I'm thinking, maybe.
The offensive lineman, he was like PWO.
Oh, okay. But was Kalen Ellis maybe the Hawaiian guy?
I don't think so. It might have been.
I don't think they came early. So.
Okay. So, but again, Lamson's been on the staff, and I remember Baber saying in like the first of his, and like the only media session he had, is that Lamson was like wide-eyed at the speed of some of the guys that were coming after him. He saw. Yeah, let's not Justin Lamson into the fire when he's got Josh Black, Kingsley Jonathan, McKinley Williams, Steve Linton, Jeff Cannon-Arcu, and Mikael Jones swarming him. Like that seems like a great way to. That seems like a great way to face his confidence early.
Welcome to the league, bud.
Yeah, that's his welcome to college football moment.
Right. Yeah.
But that's as crazy as it sounds. That's who he's going to get reps against all year. Yeah. As that last guy coming in, he's a scout team kid. And that's going to make him better down the road, which is what people didn't understand last year when we were so injury decimated, that when you don't have the ability to have a good scout team or a full scout team, it really hinders everything. It slows down what you can do in practice. You got to run your 1s versus 1s. You can't pack as much into the allotted time because you only have certain amounts of time per day that you're allotted by the NCAA to go live. So the injury situation on the offensive line and elsewhere on the team really hampered a lot of that.
And the big thing also is that Lamson, with the mobility he has, he'll be able to like mimic some of the mobile quarterbacks like Willis, like a Cunningham that the Orange will be facing this coming year. So like that will only help
all the Maliks
defense. But basically, I mean, there's no Chase Bryce that's coming up to face Syracuse this year. So other than QB, there was a couple of things that were also talked about. Yes, the seniors talked about. One of the things that Andy didn't put in there, but I wanted to like touch on because we touched on running backs a bit as well. And we know that Jarvion Howard and Abdul Adams are coming back, but Babers always says, don't forget about Cooper Lutz. And based on just the talk that he's seen, and based on some of the insider information that we may know, it seems like Cooper Lutz is going to be the 2 behind Sean Tucker, which is pretty interesting when you have guys like Adams and Howard behind him. So how does that change up Syracuse's running attack, Evan?
So I think I take people back to when Dante Strickland played, and he played over Mo Neal, and people said, why? Mo Neal's more explosive, and Irv Phillips moved to the slot, and in Baber's offense, the running back makes a lot of the line calls. And so I think what you might see with Lutz is a trust, one, to make the right calls and get guys in the right position, to be able to block as well, if it's a passing down, to be able to throw a block. And when he runs the ball, he's kind of a one-cut-and-go guy, which is what the offense wants. They don't want someone that dances in the backfield. The idea is to, spread the defense wide and run between the tackles and hit it like he did against Notre Dame. That long run, I think, was the perfect example of what they want. Be decisive, make your cut and go, and he shows good hands. So I think, it's not a tell. Syracuse didn't throw the ball to Tucker a lot last year, but when you have someone like Lutz in the game, it makes the defense have to think about, okay, what are they doing? What's the call going to be? And if the Syracuse offense is really going to want to do things, they're going to have to use the tight end and the running backs in the passing game. We harp on it all the time, especially the tight ends. But I mean, if teams are going to focus on doubling Harris on the outside and try to take away those passes and those routes, you're going to be able to get running backs and tight ends on linebackers, and you've got to make teams pay for doing that.
Yeah, there were
it doesn't shock me, but
there were a couple of times last year where we saw Cooper Lutz run like 10-yard curl routes right up the middle, get open real easily, and get an easy first down. And that, again, is a big part of the offense that I think misses out, because Mo Neal was actually pretty good as a receiving running back as well. And yeah, like you said, Tucker isn't that guy. He's dropped a couple of easy passes, and I doubt that Adams and Howard can provide that same thing. But Steve, what do you think Adams and Howard potentially could do as the 3 and 4 guys on the depth chart?
It's weird because when you look at them, they're 1 and 2 guys coming back from a year off. That last year when we were going in, they were the guys. And if they're coming back, either Babers has sold them on what he's planning to use them as, or they're coming back with the thought that they can wholeheartedly compete for that one spot with Tucker. And no matter how that ends up, it's going to be good for Syracuse football. Whether it's the competition driving all 3 of them forward, or them having some sort of defined, stable role. Either option could be good. I would more think that Babers probably defined a role and also said, you're still, in the competition. You don't hand it to, even for what Tucker did, you don't hand him the reins unequivocally. It's not like he's wearing 44 on his back quite yet, but it's his start, and it's theirs to take away from him. That said, using them in certain situations and defined situations could be a way forward to kind of keep everybody happy and on the same page, because running a stable of four running backs and trying to keep them happy is going to be not easy.
Not even close.
It won't be, but if you get to this offense where they want to go and say they're running 80 to 85 plays and 55 to 60% of those are runs,
yep.
You're not going to give them to one guy, and not over a season without breaking down. So, there's carries to be had there, probably not for 4 guys. It'd be great if Syracuse could make it through a season healthy, but I don't think having these options is a bad thing, because you don't have a 155-pound freshman being asked to carry the ball in ACC play. And even if it's, a defined role such as short yardage or red zone, for these guys, it's something that the offense could throw out there, and especially when you add Schrader to the mix. If they want to get really creative with Gilbert and want to get a full house backfield, and you have Schrader with Tucker and Howard possibly, and Elmore as a fullback, now all of a sudden you may solve some of your first and goal woes as an offense, when you can just run the ball and power people over.
Yeah, and you may see a lot more too of the multiple sets where you've got 2 of those guys in the backfield, Howard and Adams being significantly better blockers than what Tucker showed us last year. God help us all if Tucker does not improve in pass blocking, because they're going to, with the other two back, they're going to have to telegraph that they're passing by putting them in, because Tucker he missed a lot of easy pass block reads. Not that I went back and watched all those or anything, but it was understandable for
the football season last year on that.
Right. It was understandable as a true freshman coming in to not be able to pick up those reads in a scheme that, you're working inside out, or depending on the play call, where your read is, you're also the one making the calls. So it was, and I want to say they had some, I don't know whether it was Elmore helping them or there was some assistance or whatever, but it was a rough spot for him to be in. So here's to hoping he gets better, or that's might handcuff the OCs a little as to what is happening. So, and I say OCs just because I guarantee you don't bring in Mike Schmidt to not have him impact some of your play calling and what he thinks that line can do and where he wants, he's a run first guy and specialized at San Diego State in, kind of that mid-power scheme, working between that guard and tackle and getting running backs upfield and moving. So it'll be interesting. You don't think changing an offensive line coach would have as much impact as I think this is going to have on a team.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that play calling, because I was writing Tommy DeVito's Get to Know this week, and I just, when we were doing Tweets of Wonder, and I was looking through, I just remembered one of the tweets that he put out early January. It was during the national championship game with Alabama, and he was like gushing over the play calling and the emotion that he saw from Devontae Smith. And it reminds me, like, this is when we saw an article earlier this month from The Athletic. There was an unnamed ACC assistant that said, the Syracuse offense is predictable. It's predictable in its play calling. So, like, what can Gilbert and maybe Schmidt as well do to be creative and disruptive and deceptive in order to make Syracuse more unpredictable in their play calling?
So the big thing with Baber's system is it's predicated on speed. And if you don't have the speed, you can pick up a read like that. Like, if you have the time to sit back as a DB, as a linebacker, to pick up personnel, to pick up, any sort of tips that you've gleaned from the week of film review, you can do that very easily in the time that we give you. If we're working at pace, the lack of motion makes sense. If we're not going to work at pace, then we need to put in some sort of pre-snap motions, some sort of pre-snap, anything to give the offense a tip over the defense. Because right now, we're lining up static, they're matching up with that and going. And that's going to favor the defense. As dumb as it sounds, with the quality of the defenses we're seeing, the ability to read and react is better than whatever you can draw up, especially with the limited playbook we've shown. If you're moving at pace, that's fine. If you're showing some pre-snap motions, other reads, like Tommy was gushing about during the Bama game, it's like, okay. Any of those, in his brain, he's like, all of these would help it so that they're not already taking away my first read before the snap.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's not just the motion, it's the moving players around too, lining them up at different
shifts
spots.
And
I go back to, I think Sarkisian took a lot of stuff from Andy Reid, and Shanahan, and if you look at guys like George Kittle and Travis Kelce, and they're freak athletes, and but Andy Reid moves Kelce around so much that if people say you got to take away Kelce, well, how do you take him away when sometimes he lines up as a tight end, sometimes he's split in the slot, sometimes he's out wide, sometimes he motions into the backfield, sometimes he's under center, and so all those little wrinkles, like you said, and that's forcing NFL defenses and NFL coaches who have unlimited time and all these resources, have 8 people in the box watching every play and trying to break down film on the sidelines, and they're not able to grasp what he's going to do and where he's going to go. And what that does is create some mismatches. And we saw a little bit with Gilbert when they moved Taj Harris into the slot late in the year, and how that got him open and very productive. You have a guy like Luke Benson. You have different people that can motion around, right, and move into different locations that now all of a sudden you don't have to have all these guys shifting around, especially college players. You don't have to make it super complicated for them with all this pre-snap motion. But if you're moving your players around just a little bit and even running similar plays, now all of a sudden, if Taj Harris moves and the defense is like, oh, he's the guy, we're going to double him. Now all of a sudden Cooper Lutz runs a wheel route, and now he's in a vacated area because the safety on that side of the field is too preoccupied with Taj Harris. And I think those are the things that I'd like to see, especially from right off the bat from Gilbert this year.
Right, you have a poor man's, as dumb as it sounds, you have an ultra poor man's Travis Kelce in Luke Benson too, who has the size and speed to line up wherever the hell you want him on that, in the receiving core. And we just have him squatting next to the line or in the backfield, which makes some...
And think about the other tight ends that they have. Landon Morris and Stephen Mahar Jr. are also those like catch first tight ends. We saw it from Mahar in the scrimmage footage that no one on this site broke down. But then you also had Landon Morris, who was ranked again a top 10 each tight end by Sports Illustrated coming into the recruiting cycle. So you have options there. We saw Benson line up in the slot maybe once. And like the only pre-snap motion we saw was Nykeem Johnson jet sweeps. Which worked at times, but like they only happened once every other game. So like we didn't really get the full breadth of what that could do to like change up the running game and change up the the play calling.
Right. So you piqued my interest on something there though. Oh, sorry, Kevin.
I was gonna say you can get in first and goal and go out with Elmore and Benson and either Morris or Mahar, and force the opposing team to go big. And then you can walk those two tight ends out wide and get one-on-one coverage against cornerbacks. And in some DBs in college, you're going to get 5'7" or 5'8" guys on a 6'6" receiver. And now all of a sudden, now if you want to throw a quick slant down at the goal line, you're not throwing it to your 5'8" guy on a 6'4", 6'4" DB, or trying to fit him in when you go 4 wide and the linebackers are there and he's going to get drilled. I mean, I think those are the things that don't have to be super complex. But, if you've got personnel that you can move around, now all of a sudden, like, you guys have mentioned, like the defenders and the defensive coordinators, you're not as predictable. And so they're not calling out what to look for, and they're not able to key on it pre-snap.
So one thing, and you kind of touched on it there as well, Kevin, with the package you're describing, but what got me thinking, Elmore back in the backfield, especially with more experience blocking, drastically changes the looks, because you effectively have a tight end that doesn't have to be a tight end. He's got the talent to block as an interior guard and the mobility of a fullback tight end. I don't think we're going to see him out on the wheel route catching anything. Scratch that. I want to see. That is going to be goal line, everybody runs off, Rhino on a wheel route.
we may need a new carrier dome.
Twitter would break.
Oh, absolutely.
We may need a new carrier dome roof. Chris Elmore catches a touchdown.
But having him back there as that blocking fullback, or as someone who can fill a spot on the line as a secondary blocker, allows you to move those tight ends around, allows you to move that personnel around, even allows you to go empty set on the tight end of things with him behind as a fullback, and that opens up other options as far as what you can do with him. It's, again, having a healthy offensive line changes a lot of things, like not having to play your fullback there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Call me crazy.
It's amazing what freak injuries don't do to Syracuse football team that as we've seen, needs everyone possible because of the speed that pretty much every single unit plays at. So finally, hopefully, like Dino said, they finally have a healthy offensive team. And they finally have a healthy team in general. So hopefully, we will see what that means come in about 5-6 weeks time when they travel to Ohio to open the 2021 season, and we'll see what that means for coming ACC play. We'll also see what it means for ACC play in the near future, because Syracuse may or may not have some new opponents in the ACC in the near future, because the conferences are blowing up once again. And as Steve alluded to, it seems like we have this conversation every 2 years about football conferences realigning and creating super conferences. But now it's becoming real, with Texas and Oklahoma expected to announce their departure from the Big 12 and the additions to the SEC, which means Syracuse might have an opportunity to snag someone and join and the ACC might have an opportunity to drag someone to the ACC. So, first of all, what does this mean for the Big 12, and then what does this mean for the ACC? Kevin, I'll start with you on that.
I mean, if Texas and Oklahoma leave, it could be the end of the Big 12, because I think we've already heard that Kansas is reaching out to the Big 10. We've heard that West Virginia would love to be in the ACC. I'm sure there have been some overtures to the Pac-12 from TCU and Baylor. And I just don't know that the teams in the AAC are as appealing to the Big 12 and to those schools to want to stick around. Obviously, I think they could cobble together conferences if they wished, but what's their TV deal going to look like for football from Fox? And if you lost to Kansas, then your basketball, if you lose Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas, now your basketball package is not super attractive. Sorry, Doug Gottlieb, but Oklahoma State is not.
Oklahoma State doesn't have Cade Cunningham.
And not anymore, nope. And even though they have Woody Newton, it's not the same. So
too soon, man. Too soon.
But I think the interesting piece though to me is that these rumors that are floating around that the SEC isn't done, and that they would be looking at Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, and Florida State and try to have some 20-team like super duper conference. Like I don't see the benefit to their schools for that, because even in a 12-team playoff, like they're not going to be 10 SEC schools. So I guess you'd get a lot more money, but at what cost? Because if you're not Alabama or LSU, like you're never going to compete in a league like that. And even Florida State, like you're going to join there and get a lot more money, and you're going to have fun being like 11th with probably Texas and Ole Miss, but like, are you paying your football coach $6 million a year to finish 12th or 13th in a conference?
Well, and that's
probably not. So
going back to, of course, looking at the shirts you guys have on, going back to the European Super League concept. Like, that blew up for a reason. Yes, it would make sense. It'll be a different reason for why this would blow up. But, like, SEC goes to 20 teams. They're not even trying to do the Super League thing of getting the 20 best teams in the country. Everything that's being talked about is just like the top 12 and then 6 other guys. And my math is horribly off there, but you get my point. Like, what's Vanderbilt going to do when they get their ass kicked by the entire top half of their conference every single year? Like, I mean, Clark Lee's still going to collect a paycheck, but
they're going to invest it all in baseball. And just
there you go.
I don't think there's another lighter coming down the line.
No, but I mean, your point is valid. I mean, I think like you can get big checks and people like that, but your fans aren't going to like you when you can't win.
Yeah.
And it's not just Vanderbilt. Like like what does Tennessee do? Tennessee just pulled away UCF's AD and football coach. And they're not happy with 6 wins or 7 wins. So what are they going to do in a super conference? Like, how many people are going to go to Neyland Stadium when you're, 4-7 and 3-8, and you're losing by 30 or 40 points, because you're not going to be able to compete. You're not going to get recruits, even if you are the Super League. like the other schools that are still going to play football are still going to pick up talent because people aren't going to go sit the bench at
Right.
the SEC schools for 3 years and hope that they get drafted.
Well, you got, and you look at it, you've got Tennessee, you've got Vandy, you've got even, dare I say, even South Carolina and Mizzou and Kentucky and,
Oh yeah,
Arkansas. Like, what are they doing?
Auburn,
Ole Miss, Auburn,
right?
yeah.
I mean,
A&M. What's
if you look
A&M
at-
going to do if Texas comes in?
I mean, especially if Syracuse is any good at Texas, right?
Right.
And then if you want to add Oklahoma, I mean, you want to add Ohio State and Clemson. I mean, yeah, Michigan and Florida State have fallen off, obviously, but you're going to help those programs by putting them in this Super League because now they'll sell like, hey, we are a premier program. I mean, that would, I mean, it wouldn't hurt Syracuse as much as it would Miami, but like, if Florida State suddenly has better access to the Florida recruits because now they're in this top league,
Right.
They'll be better, and they'll have more money to get a good coach, and they won't be settling for these people that are reaches. They'll go and pull productive people out of jobs, like when Urban Meyer retires from Jacksonville for health reasons.
Yeah.
So what is
Well, and
so what does this
Urban
mean
Meyer
for
made
the
me think,
ACC?
though. Like, Urban Meyer made me think, with Florida already as a member, like, they're not going to let FSU in.
No.
Like, why would they add another institution in their state to the best league that they already have access to for recruiting purposes? Like, that just
Which is why Texas
shits on
A&M is thinking
everything.
of leaving.
Right. Like,
I mean, it's all posturing because the rumor is that they're lobbying for a deal that could double their TV revenue, double their revenue, and so you would basically sell out for the money.
right. But
but
realistically, is anyone going to pay that?
I mean, boosters are not going to be happy with, hey, we turned a profit.
Right.
When you're getting blown out in conference like 5 times a year, there's no way you're going to sell people on the, hey, but look at our bottom line, and we built this brand new gymnastics facility and added fencing. Like, it's just not going to work. I mean, look at how bad Syracuse lacrosse fans are with, like, we made the tournament and lost. Like, you think Tennessee football and South Carolina football fans are still going to show up at 80,000 strong when they're losing by 40 points to these teams that they let in just to get paychecks? Like, I don't know. I think the ACC has to hold out on Notre Dame. So I think they can't fill up. I think we've heard rumors that they were proactive in reaching out to Texas and Oklahoma. I know John's pushing for the West Coast editions purely for to get Syracuse games out in LA, which is fine. I think you should do that with Stanford and USC. Coming. I can't see the ACC president signing off on that.
Could you imagine?
Can't see them sending like the women's soccer team out to play in California. Weekday
Just to get rolled by Stanford.
Yeah.
Now, if they I did read that there was a talk about working together, where you might see those conferences stay separate but agree to play crossover games in a lot of sports and maybe work together on selling the TV rights together and doing some things creatively, which would be more realistic, I think, than doing too much. I think obviously the ACC's play would be if they can grab Notre Dame and even West Virginia. That would be the ideal. You don't want to start going into let's talk about USF or Memphis and.
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap up the conversation, like, how does the ACC respond to this? Is it the only play to add Notre Dame and West Virginia? Are they okay if they just add West Virginia and lose out on Notre Dame, and because Notre Dame wants to stay independent because the NBC money is too good? Like, what is the play here now from the ACC?
I think you call A&M. And if they really don't want Texas and Oklahoma in, and if you can add A&M and maybe convince Notre Dame off that, I don't know what numbers was. Now Steve's got me confusing with the math here, but if you added A&M and West Virginia, and I think you still have room for Notre Dame should they choose to join, and that might be your play. or trying to
Well,
work something
yeah.
out with the Pac-10, like to have some sort of partnership when it comes to selling your media rights and doing some events that way.
Steve, what do you think?
I don't know. The way these things always pan out, it's like we'll figure it out when it happens or if it happens. It'll be another. I think when this all dropped on Friday, John said it best, where we're gonna get a week and a half of just stupid. And
We're in it right now. Congratulations, everyone.
once we get out of the stupid, everything should become a lot clearer. And if I was a betting man, I'd say nothing happens and we're just back to square one. But who the hell knows? Like, stranger things have happened. I mean, look at Syracuse is now in the ACC. So here we are. Or I guess the stranger thing would have been Syracuse wasn't in the ACC the first time. So
yeah, that was the strange thing at first. And
when that all went down,
we
it was
won't
like,
go to the Big Ten. Syracuse will not be in the Big Ten. I will
No.
say that. I can go on record with that.
Did that article from ESPN come out this week or last week when they talked about how Doc Rose got the call to join the ACC?
Last week. So.
That was last week, but yeah, so one phone call on the beach is all you need to join the ACC. So
Well, when they've already vetted you, they vetted us in 2003 and had the governor in Virginia not gotten involved and swapped Virginia Tech, it would have been Syracuse with Miami and BC. And then it was the Wofford had done his work. They had vetted us. We were in until we weren't. And then it was just sit and wait till the opportunity was ready for them to go again. So, but that's why it was only one phone call. These things all happen. I think that's the funniest thing to me is how Texas A&M pleaded that they didn't know anything about this and they were blindsided, and then the story came out that the SEC's been talking about this for 6 months. And that means Greg Sankey, who pushed for the 12-team playoff, knew that he was looking to load up his conference. And so kudos to him. He is a Syracuse alum, and he did maneuver the other commissioners to push, although he doesn't have the expanded playoff yet. So he maybe didn't checkmate them yet. So we'll see if they can counter his moves.
all for the hashtag brand. That's what it's all for.
All for the brand. Always for the brand.
Speaking of brand, I would say we finish out this cast with a little Syracuse brand of Gold Cup action. Because it is now official that Tajon Buchanan and Kamal Miller will be playing in the semifinals for Canada against Mexico, since Canada just knocked off Costa Rica? Costa Rica 2-0. No, they knocked off Costa Rica 2-0 in the round of 8, or round of 16. Round of 8. And if you'd like to watch Miles Robinson, he'll be kicking off starting at right center back for the U.S. in approximately 53 minutes. If you're watching this tomorrow, you know what happened, but we don't.
Well, we've wrapped up, again, as Andy always says, we've managed to jam-pack an hour full of Syracuse and maybe not Syracuse talk on a Sunday night in July. Obviously, these will get more Syracuse-based as we get more into the season. But for the off-season, that's not too half bad. Thanks to Kevin for pitching in for Andy. Hopefully Andy doesn't have a screaming dog in the background next time we see him. But as always, thanks also to Steve for helping us produce the show and putting us live on YouTube. Speaking of which, if you're on YouTube, give a like on the video, comment what you'd like to see us talk about as well in the comment section of the YouTube video as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so that you get it notified when we go live with another live cast. Guys, this has been fun as always. Again, thank you, Kevin, so much for joining us.
No problem. Happy to join you guys.
That's
Sounds
another
good.
week wrapped up of Orange Talk. Somehow we got it in. I don't know how we do it, but somehow we got it. And only thing left to say is go Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.